Hello everyone, welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today I want to talk to you about love. All about love, and not necessarily just in relationship, but love just in general. Very specific to you though, like what your love looks like. So the question I'm asking you to consider for yourself today is your love honest? Now that may seem like a strange question, but a lot of times we say we want love or to experience love in a very particular way, and it may not necessarily show up in the ways that we say we want to experience or receive, and it all comes back to the way that we are loving ourselves and what we are holding on to. And because, of course, here on Reiki Radio, we're talking about energy, we will get into the topic of how your energy reflects back to you your relationship with love. So the first thing I want you to consider is just that, your relationship with love itself. Now, of course, this is going to express itself in our relationships with other people. So even if you are in a space right now where you want to experience love in a new way, or, that could be a new partner you want to call into your life, or just mending or healing the relationship that you're in, we're going to back it on up and consider your relationship with you. So what does your love look like? What does love look like for you in your life? Now, it's a very interesting thing when we start to observe ourselves. And that's one of the keys with this energy transformation and these journeys of awakening is first we have to come into observation of ourselves and be very vulnerable and open and honest with ourselves so that we can gain some understanding. And when you think about what your love looks like, I want you to think about how you express love. When you are in relationship with others, how do you express love? Now, you may have some ideas that pop to mind. This may be an easier thing to recognize within ourselves. But the bigger question is, what is your expression of love towards you? Now, a lot of times this is influenced by what we were shown or what we were taught. So if we grew up in an environment where love was expressed in a very particular way, this could have a lot to do with how we personally not only express love ourselves, but even how we identify ourselves. If we feel deserving of love, if we feel comfortable with expressions of love. So when we really look back at what we were shown or what we were taught, even what we felt along the way, this can give us a lot of insight about our relationship with love itself. This can even show us what it is we want to experience. Sometimes, again, we may mirror what our past may have been. But a lot of times we want to experience love that we feel that we may have lacked. Or perhaps we look to fill a void. We hear that a lot of times. Sometimes in relationship, we are looking for someone to fill a void of, what we feel that we are lacking. Or we want someone to show up and help us to feel validated, to feel seen, to feel loved. But how does that play out for you? Now, the interesting thing is a lot of times when we don't feel deserving or we don't feel worthy, or maybe we haven't had a healthy relationship with love in the past, the way that we go about it may not be supportive of us. Sometimes we fall into these patterns of manipulation or acting out. Or even a lot of times we will fall into the memory or the feeling or the displays from our past. So think of this, for example. Have you ever been in a relationship and it went a particular way, and then now you're in a new relationship? And we talked about this before, but in the current relationship, you may be responding and acting from the energies of the past just because you are expecting things to be a certain way or expecting someone to respond in a particular way just because it's what you experienced before. Now, how is that influencing your love? And is that honest with you and what you actually want? So I'm going to ask you again, what do you want to experience in love? Think about what you actually want love to look like for you. And I want you to consider if that is what is showing up for you. What are you asking for? Now, when we get into the energy, of course, what we generate, we attract back. So our experiences with love and in love are oftentimes a reflection of the energies that we are holding. So if you find yourself in these exchanges of love that may be combative or challenging in a very particular way, that is giving you some insight about energy that you are holding, something that you may not have healed, some old hurt, some old wounding. And it's important that you go into observation and really honor what you are holding in truth so that you can look at why it is you're holding on to this and how you can best heal it or transform it for yourself. And just so you know, when we talk about energy transformation, of course, we can talk about things like using Reiki and, different techniques, but it's also our perspective, how we are viewing things, our point of view, what our opinions are about experiences we've had, the level of understanding that we may have around it. So I want to give you another example of this. A lot of people hold on to, let's say, some upset from childhood. Perhaps their parent didn't necessarily express love in a way that they felt should have been expressed. And so then we may hold on to this animosity towards our parent because of their way of expressing love. Now, we can hold on to that animosity and upset and fall into this energy of using that as the reason that we don't necessarily express love in a loving way. We can look at that and say, because we didn't learn how, or this is because of what was done to us. On the other hand, we can look at that experience and consider that perhaps the parent wasn't shown love in a loving way. And perhaps they were expressing love based on what they were shown and what they were taught. And perhaps the parent, regardless of their expression of love, felt that they were showing love in the best way they knew how. So when we look at it from that perspective, it opens us up with some energy of forgiveness, some more understanding. It doesn't mean that necessarily we're going to like, what the experience was, but we may have some more understanding around it. And because you're able to understand it, you can then be more open to forgive. And then once you are able to forgive, it transforms that energy. You've changed the way you perceive that story or that experience. And then you recognize, well, I don't have to repeat this pattern. I can actually make an effort to love differently because I understand that that's not how it has to be. And I actually have choice in this. And so now you've changed the whole trajectory of love and your experience with love just by evaluating what you have experienced and how you may have been perceiving it or holding it. So once you have this awareness and you become more open, you may then start to attract in experiences that are different. Now, another thing to consider when we're thinking about our love and how we express it, or if our love is honest, it is also, causing us or asking us to look at how we see ourselves. What do you think of you? What is your opinion of you? Do you believe that you are deserving of love? Love that is kind. Love that is forgiving. Are you forgiving? How do you treat others in relationship? Now, here's another interesting thing. A lot of times people will say, well, I show up in love and I am giving and I am considerate and I am forgiving, but I'm not receiving that in return. Well, when we look at something like this, we have to consider our intent. What is the energy behind what we're doing? When you show up in love, and let's say you are forgiving and you feel like you're being taken advantage of, are you showing up in that space because you just want approval, or you're afraid of speaking your truth because you don't want the other person to be upset, or you don't want them to leave you? Do you settle for certain behaviors or patterns from others because you just want them there? That's different than if you are valuing yourself and your worth and you're forgiving someone just because you want to forgive. There's different intention behind there. So even when you think about the way that you personally express love and how you show up in relationship, consider the energy beneath your actions. It's really interesting when we think about how much we actually learn about ourselves, what we can learn about ourselves in the exchange of love. And this is all relationships, not just romantic, even, the relationships with our parents, our family, our siblings, our friends. What patterns are showing up for you, and what does this tell you about you? Now, the reason I want you to think about this today is because we all have a tendency to think about what someone else can do, how they should change, how they should be differently, how we don't like their behavior, their patterns. But again, all of these things that may trigger us from other people are still showing us or teaching us something about ourselves. So anytime we catch ourselves pointing the finger or blaming, take a breath and step back into consideration of why this is upsetting to you, or why you are engaging in this particular behavior. So, for example, one of the things that's popping to mind now, there was someone that I knew that they kept finding themselves in relationships where there was infidelity. And they didn't understand this because they were very faithful. And they didn't understand why they kept calling in people who were cheating on them. And when they took the time to consider what they were shown or what they were taught about love, they thought, okay, well, what I was shown was, marriage. Their parents were married for very many years and still married at that time. But they thought about what they were taught, and it dawned on them that when they were really young and the first person whomever cheated on them, their mother told them that that's just what men do. Her mother told her, men cheat. That's just what happens. So it became a story that she believed. And it became programmed into her field of consciousness that this is just what people or men do. So she kept calling into her space these relationships where people were not faithful to her. And although this thought wasn't at the surface, it was still floating and lingering within her field of consciousness. And once she realized that this is what she was holding on to, she had the choice of, is she going to hold on to this belief? Did she understand that that was just her mother's point of view, maybe based on her mother's experiences? But more importantly, that she didn't have to hold onto that belief. And that she could expect and want and call in a monogamous relationship or partnership. There are so many layers to what we hold that oftentimes are not at the forefront of our conscious recollection. But when we notice certain patterns that keep presenting themselves to us, that gives us this clue of like, wow, there must be something I'm holding on to that is causing me to have this experience again and again. So with love, we have to look at what we think of ourselves, how well we love and honor and respect ourselves, but then also what we may have been shown or taught. Now, the beauty of this is that energies can always be transformed. We can always transform our perspectives, our points of view. And I will say, while I really didn't intend for this to be so much about relationships with other people, it's hard to talk about love without bringing that up as example. But the truth is that it all starts with the way that you're loving you. So as you move forward, really observe that. Notice the language, your self-talk. Are you overly critical of you? Do you speak to yourself in kind ways? Do you nurture you? Or are you always, putting others before you, everyone else's needs before your own? And in a lot of ways, we were taught to do this. We were taught that, to be selfless, which is, it's beautiful to be there to support other people. But when we aren't taking the time to nurture and support ourselves, at some point we start giving from an empty tank. And then we can come into a space of resentment if we feel like we're constantly giving and not receiving. And more importantly, we create this pattern of always doing and not receiving whatever we're giving in return. And that in of itself puts us in a space of imbalance. There's harmony and balance in all things. So even when we think about love, we can't just think about the giving of it. We also have to think about the receiving of it. Are you comfortable with giving and expressing love? Do you do it in a way that you feel is loving? And are you also comfortable with accepting and receiving love that is supportive and loving? And if you feel challenged in the exchange of love either way, you just want to examine the why. So that you, again, come into that space of choice to do healing and transformation that will be the most supportive of you. Now, I just want to go back again to the topic of our intention, because a lot of times we function in relationship in a manipulative way. I mean, we do. A lot of times we give or we show up because of what we want in return, instead of just giving and showing up just for love itself. So sometimes we are not honoring what is true for us, which may be our fear, which may be our doubts, our insecurities, our worry. We try to mask all of these things by just giving, hoping that that love will be reciprocated. But that energy of our fear, our insecurities, our worries, our doubts are still entangled in there and are going to influence what comes back at us. So if you want to clean it up, so to speak, we really have to be honest with ourselves and look at the energies we hold. What insecurities do we have? What fears do we have in relation to love? And again, looking at how worthy and deserving we feel. Now, we've all had so many experiences in life, and a lot of our experiences shape what we hold in belief today. But in the realm of energy, time isn't linear. So even though something may have happened in our past and we are functioning from it now, we're not allowing ourselves healing, growth, or learning. And when we have these challenges or when we've been hurt, a lot of times we become shut down because we want to guard ourselves from being hurt again. So then again, we're not necessarily functioning from a space of honesty and love. We're more functioning from a place of avoidance because we're afraid. And what do you think that's going to do, or how that will influence your relationships, your relationship with love and loving you? Now, I'll say this again. When we observe ourselves, the key is to observe ourselves with compassion and understanding that we are learning all the time. So step out of the judgment, or, if you are holding on to energies that you think like, wow, I can't believe I think that, I can't believe I've been holding on to this, all of those things that may bring up some regret or upset. Take a breath and allow yourself to lift into a higher point of view. If you step out of the emotion and look at yourself from a space of neutrality, almost like you're observing you as a third party, and you look at these aspects of you, this person who has been hurt, this person who has experienced whatever you've experienced along the way, and really observe you from a place of understanding. Then you create this space of nurturing. Like in the same way that you may nurture a friend who has gone through what you have gone through. And when you start to observe you more openly, again, you give yourself more opportunity to actually heal your own hurt and to address your own insecurities and to have more understanding about you. And as you do this work and it all starts to unravel and it starts to become clear, you have the choice to then love and forgive and honor yourself with more compassion. So you start to love you unconditionally, outside of your judgment, outside of your fear, outside of old beliefs and old stories. And as you come into a space and align with loving yourself more honestly, acknowledging what you have been holding on to, you then attract in love that is more honest. It changes everything. The work that we do on ourselves, the love that we work on healing for ourselves, it impacts every area of our life. And, again, when we talk about love, of course, we think about relationships with others. So if you want to experience love in relationship better, it starts with the relationship with love for you. Okay? So that is what we're doing today. what I want you to really consider today again is your expression of love, what you may have been shown or taught, and how you can view all of this from a higher perspective to gain some clarity, some understanding, and even forgive. Notice where you may have certain patterns that keep presenting themselves and what they're actually showing you or teaching you about what you hold. And again, making the choice to transform those energies by transforming your point of view. Now, one of the things I have on my website that I've shared before is I have a meditation series that helps you to connect more deeply with you and very specifically the energy of love. So if you feel that you need support in this, be sure to head over to my website, which is yuchi.com. That's YEWCHI.com, and look for the Fill Up with Love series. And as you do these meditations, go in with the intention that you are going to allow yourself to connect with you, free from judgment, free from criticism, that you are creating a sacred space to go into union with you, to be able to observe anything that is coming up in your field, to love and nurture yourself with more compassion. Go into these meditations with the intention of healing and transforming in the highest and best way for you. And take note of what comes up for you. You may be surprised at what you discover. And, again, it's so interesting what it is that we hold that isn't necessarily on the surface. But once we allow this openness and this vulnerability with ourselves, we learn so much. And the more love you have for you, the more you expand the love in your life as a whole. So I think it would be very interesting to see what does come up for you. Even if you've had any insights just today through the podcast, what's come up for you. Or if you do the meditations and you have some insights, I would love to hear what you've learned about you and your energy with love. And you can choose right now to be honest with yourself. Be honest with you in love so that you can harmonize with yourself in a more loving way. Okay, so that is all for today. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, be sure to email me through my website, yuchi.com. If you need any help with energetic alignment or want to go deeper in your own self-discovery, you can do a personal session with me. There's more information about all of that on my website as well. So I send you so much love. I hope that you are having a beautiful day and that you'll fall more deeply in love with you just by going into observation of the beautiful light that you are. Have a beautiful day, everyone, and remember to always journey in love.